Shout out time. Here's a shout out just for you. You support me, so I support you. This shout out is for a friend, a fairly new friend, the Sand Van, which I think is fun. It says, introducing, we are Van Life, introducing our YouTube channel, the Sand Van. We are an Australian/English couple living in the beautiful Gold Coast of Australia. So another Australian friend. We have 3 or 4 of you from Australia? I won't have to count. Never mind. Anyway, travel along with us, experience our adventures as we travel van life to the fullest. Whether it's converting a bus, RV, caravan, or camping in a car. Camping in a car does not sound very comfortable. RV life is something I'd like to have an RV because I think it would be easier to travel, especially with the children. They can stretch out when they want to. We can rest, maybe a little bit cheaper. I don't know. I've never done an RV park. I'll have to ask my mother. Anyway, check them out. Like, share, comment. Let them know that we sent you by, and have a good day. Go for history, man.
All right, with Joe, the bearded historian for the Bud Files. We're looking at how Halloween works here in America, and from its early roots. Originally, given a lot of our settlers came in the New England states, the colonial period, were really limited as far as Halloween was practiced. The Protestant belief was very rigid, much more common in the Maryland and the southern colonies. But as the beliefs and customs of different European groups and American Indians meshed, a distinctly American version of Halloween began to emerge. The first of these celebrations included play parties, which were public events held to celebrate the harvest. Neighbors would share stories of the dead, tell each other's fortunes, dance and sing. And colonial Halloween festivals also featured the telling of ghost stories and the mischief-making of all kinds. By the middle of the 19th century, annual autumn festivals were common, but Halloween was not quite celebrated everywhere. Well, by the second half of the 19th century, America started getting flooded with new immigrants. These new immigrants, especially millions of Irish fleeing the Irish potato famine, helped popularize the celebration of the Halloween nationally. Now, borrowing European traditions, Americans began to dress up in costumes and go house to house asking for food or money, a practice that eventually became today's trick-or-treat tradition. Young women actually believed that on Halloween they could divine the name or appearance of their future husband by doing tricks with yarn, apple parings, or mirrors. Angel would never do anything of the sort.
I've heard of the mirror one. It's a paranormal game.
Yeah. In the late 1800s, there was a move in America to mold Halloween into a national holiday more about community and neighborly get-togethers than about ghosts, pranks, and witchcraft. At the turn of the century, Halloween parties for both children and adults became the common way to celebrate the day. Parties would focus on games, food of the season, and festive costumes. Parents were encouraged by newspapers and community leaders to take anything frightening and grotesque out of the Halloween celebrations. Because of these efforts, Halloween lost more of its superstitious and religious overtones by the beginning of the 20th century.
And now we encourage them to add those features.
Yeah. Now, by the 1920s and 30s, Halloween had become a secular but more community-centered holiday, with parades and town-wide Halloween parties as the featured entertainment. Despite these best efforts of many schools and communities, vandalism began to plague some of the celebrations in many communities during this time. By the 1950s, though, town leaders had successfully limited vandalism, and the Halloween had evolved into a holiday directed mostly at the young. Due to the high numbers of young children during the 50s baby boom, parties moved from town civic centers into the classroom or home where they could be more easily accommodated. Now, between the 20s and the 50s, the century-old practice of trick-or-treating was also revived. Trick-or-treating was a relatively inexpensive way for the entire community to share the Halloween celebration. In theory, families could prevent tricks by being played on them by providing the neighborhood children with small treats. Let's get the little buggers sugared up.
Give them back to their parents.
Yes. Thus, the new American tradition born today, and it continued to grow. Today, Americans spend an estimated $6 billion annually on Halloween, making it the country's second largest commercial holiday after Christmas. We've seen yard decorations.
I
You
love
see-
the
they're
yard
cool.
decorations.
Yeah.
They're so
A
cool.
lot of hard work put into some of those displays. Now, as well with the Halloween guys, it's also been shown to be a pretty good, as we were noting, draw at the box office. Classic Halloween movies like the Halloween franchise began in 1978. The original film directed by John Carpenter, starring Donald Pleasance, Nick Castle, Jamie Lee Curtis, and Tony Moran. In Halloween, a young boy named Michael Myers murders his 17-year-old sister and committed to jail, only to escape on Halloween night and seek out his old home and a new target. Direct sequel starring the original Jamie Lee Curtis and Nick Castle was released in 2018. And a sequel to that came out in 2021. What a concept. But other well-known iconic slasher films like Scream, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Friday the 13th would also come out. They'd also come out with family-friendly Halloween movies like Hocus Pocus, Nightmare Before Christmas, Beetlejuice, and my favorite, It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. But primarily, their idea is that with the kids, being able to directly interact, going door to door, collecting candy, they'd be less likely to be going and, busting out windows, pulling pranks like sugaring gas tanks, ding-dong ditching.
I
stuff
like
like that.
that ditching.
But primarily, nowadays, granted with the pandemic, things did slow down a little bit, but I have a feeling that this year you might see more kids going door to door.
I've seen
I
a lot
know-
of the trunk or treats set up this year than I did
Right.
it last year or the year before.
Yeah, churches are having get-togethers, gatherings. The trunk or treats are kind of a.
I don't know if
around
door to
here.
door are as popular anymore with the safety and in the cold weather here.
Right.
Churches, schools, the trunk or treats, I see a lot of those.
Some parts of certain towns also, if they've been doing it for decades, like we have a West Boulevard part of town. Every house along that strip usually winds up buying like a good $200 worth of candy. And then, they just wait for the kids to show up. It's kind of their ritual. Now, locally, we also have our Civic Center. The Civic Center usually will see anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 kids go through during the day and night. Churches will have their giveaways, little parties. Sometimes they'll have, cakewalks and stuff like that. All depends on, the different types of churches. And of course, there are also people still that don't practice it, Jehovah's Witnesses. They don't believe in the holiday. But, for the most part, it's changed a lot since the early 1900s.
You're at 7 minutes.
Huh?
You're at 7 minutes.
Okay.
You suck.
Yeah, I know.
I thought this would be longer.
So did I. Well, let's pause then.
Okay, you found some more because we need at least 15 minutes because otherwise it's too short for you guys to get in here.
Yeah. A little more that they mention about Halloween, again, when it dates back to when the churches were doing a more active part of it, was the All Souls Day, tacked on to the right after Halloween. For All Souls Day, you had the Soul Cakes, All Souls Day parades in England. During the festivals, poor citizens would beg for food, and families would give them pastries called soul cakes in return for the promise to pray for the family's dead relatives. These distributions of soul cakes were encouraged by the church as a way to replace the ancient practice of leaving food and wine for roaming spirits. The practice, which was referred to
Now
as...
it's like I have to leave out treats for our ghosts, like we leave out treats for Santa.
I was going to say, with all the ghosts we have around here, we might have to do that this year.
What do you guys think? Should we leave out treats for the ghosts?
And should I give the soldiers rations, or should I give them a treat like a chocolate bar like they used to do in World War II? Do you think it depends on the type of soldier that I've got watching over the household?
We have to get a lot of different things.
I know, because you think about, the Civil War ones that were around Fort Meade, then you think about the ones from World War I and World War II. You guys are going to have to leave a comment and figure out what we want to do that, because, not only do we have my military ones, then there's the kids.
Kids are easy. We just gotta leave candy out for them.
Cookies or something,
Any type of sugar.
Hey, Sam, you want to help us out with that? Bake a cake. But these distributions of these soul cakes were encouraged by the church as a way to replace those leaving food and wine, and the practice, which was going a-souling, was eventually taken up by the children who would visit the houses in the neighborhood to be given ale, food, and money. Hey, Angel, you got to go hit us up for some money.
I don't know about you, but I think it might be bad to send your children door to door to get alcohol for you.
Yeah, get me a beer. I don't even drink. Now, the tradition of dressing in costumes for Halloween has both European and Celtic roots. Hundreds of years ago, when winter was an uncertain and frightening time, food supplies often ran low, and for the many people afraid of the dark, the short days of winter was a constant worry.
I imagine so.
On Halloween, it was believed that the ghosts came back to the earthly world.
Yes,
people
they do.
thought that they would encounter ghosts as they left their homes.
Probably. We don't have to leave our home to encounter them.
No. To avoid being recognized by these ghosts, people would wear masks that they left their homes after dark, so the ghosts would mistake them for fellow spirits.
They're all laughing at us.
Exactly. Because I don't own any blue uniforms, and I'm pretty sure Angel probably dresses a lot differently.
Now that
than
you're down a few sizes, I wouldn't mind checking Amazon and see if I can get you a
uniform.
A uniform.
Mm-hmm. Now, on Halloween, to keep the ghosts away from the houses, people would place bowls of food outside their home to appease the ghosts and prevent them from attempting to enter. Here, hit the bowl. Stay away from us. Now, Halloween has also been a holiday filled with mystery, magic, and superstition. We all love superstitions. With the Celtic end of the summer festival, people felt especially close to the deceased relatives and friends. We don't see spirits at all the time.
What? No.
And for these friendly spirits, they set places at the dinner table, left treats at the doorsteps, along the side of the road, and lit candles to help loved ones find their way back to the spirit world. I'm sorry, with the wind that we've had, getting a candle to start would be bad enough, but then the risk of fire in a drought period, no. They would sometimes light candles to help the loved ones find their way back to the spirit world. Maybe that's why they're stuck here, is because, well, we can't get the candles to stay lit.
We can get one of those battery-operated candles.
There you go. Throw them all over the cemetery as we go visit. Now, today's Halloween ghosts are often depicted as more fearsome and malevolent, and our customs and superstitions are scarier too. We avoid crossing paths with black cats, afraid that they might bring us bad luck. The idea has its roots in the Middle Ages, where many people believe that witches avoided detection by turning themselves into black cats.
Angel would love that.
Yes, she would. We try not to walk under ladders for the same reason. The superstition may have come from the ancient Egyptians, who believed that triangles were sacred. It also may have something to do with...
I thought it always had to do with the fact that the ladder might fall on me.
Well, that, and the fact is I'm too tall to get under it anyway. It also has something to do with the fact that walking under a leaning ladder tends to be fairly unsafe. And around Halloween, especially, as we try to avoid breaking mirrors, stepping on cracks in the road, or spilling salt. See, we don't have a problem with cracks in the road. Our roads usually don't have, they're gravel.
Haven't you ever heard that saying?
Yeah, step on a crack, break your mother's back. Yeah.
But that was always for sidewalks, not roads.
Right.
At least as a kid, that's where we heard that.
Now, what about the Halloween traditions and beliefs that today's trick-or-treaters have forgotten all about? Many of these obsolete rituals focused on the future instead of the past, and the living instead of the dead. In particular, they had to do with helping young women identify future husbands,
which we read about before.
Yeah, reassuring them
that's a game.
Yeah, they would someday, with luck, by the next Halloween, be married. In 18th century Ireland, a matchmaking cook might bury a ring in her mashed potatoes on Halloween, hoping to bring true love by the diner who found it. Or choking the dude.
So that seems like a good way to kill somebody.
In Scotland, fortune tellers recommended that an eligible young woman name a hazelnut for each of her suitors, and then toss the nuts into the fireplace. The nut that burned to ashes, rather than popping or exploding, the story went, represented the girl's future husband.
So if I burn you to death, you're going to be mine.
No, is that
why they get the roasted nuts for Christmas?
No, that's chestnuts. Or Chester's nuts, depending which way you look at it. The nut that burned away symbolized the love that would not last. So, obviously, you want the nut that survives. Although, how would you have to write really tiny on a chestnut.
How... They didn't have pens back then, and I don't even know with a pen I could do that.
Another tale had that if a young woman ate a sugary concoction made out of walnuts, hazelnuts, and nutmeg before bed on Halloween night, she would dream about her future husband. and cause Angel to cringe in fear. Young women tossed apple peels over their shoulders, hoping that the peels would fall on the floor in the shape of the future husband's initials. Tied to learn about their future husband by peering at egg yolks floating in a bowl of water, and stood in front of mirrors in darkened rooms, holding candles. I'm sorry, that's opening up a portal right there.
You're kind of celebrating Bloody Mary right there.
Apparently. Holding candles, looking over the shoulders at their husbands' faces.
I've heard of that one, but every time I hear it, I'm just like, why are you playing with Bloody Mary? Of course she's going to play a practical joke on you.
Other rituals were more competitive. At Halloween parties, the first guest to find a burr in the chestnut hunt would be the first to marry, and at others, the first successful apple bobber would be the first down the aisle. The angel would intentionally lose.
That makes me wonder when they stop doing
those, yeah.
I mean, they still do apple bobbing. They don't do the other one, but apple bobbing. When did it become not linked to your future?
Yeah, because I remember we used to do apple bobbing in grade school, but it never tied to
I'm
marriage
guessing
or
it's probably
anything.
at the end of the 1800s.
That's what I'm thinking. Early 1900s, late 1800s.
Cast your vote.
Cast your vote. You tell us in the comments. Of course, there were, whether we're asking for romantic advice or trying to avoid 7 years of bad luck, each one of these Halloween superstitions relies on the goodwill of the very same spirits who presence the early Celts
we're doomed.
Yeah,
we're doomed.
Felt so keenly. But those are the primary interesting pieces that they had about Halloween and what it's like here in Americas. Obviously celebrated October 31st, Monday this year. They do mention that it has its ties to the Festival of Samhain, where people would light bonfires and wear costumes to ward off ghosts. Interestingly enough, we have bonfires around here, but usually, for some reason, it's involved with a football tradition instead of a seasonal festivity. In the 8th century, Pope Gregory III designated November 1st as a time to honor the All Saints. Soon All Saints' Day were incorporated in some of the traditions of the Samhain, and the evening before was known as All Hallows' Eve, the later Halloween. Over time, the Halloween evolved into the day of activities like trick-or-treating, carving jack-o'-lanterns, festive gatherings, donning costumes, and eating treats. From what I was reading, also locally, I guess Vermilion does have its own Halloween parade.
That's a cool thing.
And then there's some parts of the eastern part of the river, on the east side. We have a lot more European ancestors, Germanic, Czech, Norwegian, and some of their festivals are still partaken. Of course, Kuchen is made year-round nowadays, but it's a kind of a staple for some of their festivals that they would have. A lot of it also depends on, where they still hold their traditions. I guess Fort Pierre has got an event, and of course, I also read just yesterday, there is a cemetery in Fort Pierre that is labeled as haunted. So that might be something to check out. We also do know that there are some haunted locations up in Deadwood, including the old original location of the number 10 saloon, where Wild Bill Hickok was shot after pulling the dead man's hand. Interestingly enough, the original site burned to the ground, but where it was is now a casino, so I don't know, maybe we ought to go up there and do a spirit box session up there.
I don't mind doing that.
Yep. But again, one of the ideas that we were looking at is, from what they were saying, is just about every single person that has worked to close Mount Moriah Cemetery has either heard something, or they won't say they're ghosts, but most of us are pretty obvious, and they've named a couple of the sections. Chinatown up there, that has a pretty good group of the Oriental Precision that are buried up there, is a very active area with both noises and ghosts, sometimes patrons. A couple times they'd have people say, well, we headed around the backside of the cemetery thinking we heard somebody and we never found them.
But my thing is it's such a big cemetery that I could probably avoid them for hours if I wanted to.
Oh, yeah.
You just have to know where they're at so you cannot be where they're at.
And the other thing that's also interesting is if you ever get a chance to look at the map of the cemetery, which is online, it actually looks like a almost like a stadium. It looks like a hollowed out bowl,
Kind of, yeah.
but it's reverted because of the hilltop. But there's that cemetery. The former cemetery was just down the hill. It's now covered in houses. And people from time to time will still go to work their gardens and discover a bone or two. And then, of course, on the other side of the canyon wall is the St. Ambrose Cemetery, which we had the joy of going and walking in. And
which you'll probably see sometime in November.
all right.
In November, I'm going to throw up random backup videos, probably Monday through Friday.
Mm-hmm.
If we come up with a live idea, which Joe and Angel seem to have come up with maybe a couple more, we will do a live Tuesdays and Thursdays just because.
Mm-hmm.
And get up our watch hours because we want to get 2,000 by the end of the year.
Yeah, we'll keep coming up with some more interesting ideas, both historical, some military, some paranormal, and we'll catch you guys on the far side and have a good day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Almost 20 minutes.